Hello, welcome to the show.
Hello, how are you both?
Doing great.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when you become an author and you kind of get in the circle, right? You get in the circle of other authors. And so it's just nice that we all get to see each other once in a while and kind of do this. So I'm truly grateful that you're here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I feel the same way. I'm always like, oh, I get to connect with other people who love talking about the things that I love to talk about. So this is fantastic.
That's exactly right. It's really true. And we're all trying to kind of do the same thing. And we're trying to elevate education, educators, leaders, and giving them tools. And so you can absolutely do that as a district instructional coach. So everybody, you're going to want to tune in here. As an instructional coach, I know that you have lots of strategies that you can share. So your master's degree is in curriculum and instruction as well. Is that correct?
So
You've got a background here.
I have a couple. I have a master's degree in curriculum instruction with a focus on literacy, and then a second master's degree in school leadership. And then it's been a year. So I got my doctorate in educational equity for executive leadership.
Yeah, that was last year, wasn't it? Last time I saw you, that's what you were working on.
I was working towards it. So now it's officially.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Amazing. That's awesome. Well, and I'm not going to skirt over this either. Like you were named one of the 20 emerging leaders for ASCD, and then one of ISTE's 20 to watch in 2022. Is that right?
24. It was just
24.
Not this past year, but the year before.
My date is off. I left it off, Josh. My bad.
I saw that. I was like, I hope she guesses right.
Throw it out. And I did not. That's okay. But, it's funny because when we try to introduce people, we want to just pull out some of the things that everybody here needs to know because they need to know the lens you're coming in with. So I think that was really important. But I do want people to understand your book. Be the Flame, sparking positive classroom communities. And that is what we're all just trying to do. So can you talk about the gist of what the work is that you do?
Yes. So with Be the Flame, sparking positive classroom communities, when I connected with Jimmy Cassis now back in 2020, it was during the pandemic. He said, I think you could write a book. If you could write a book, what would you write it about? And at that point, I had developed a really cool community on Instagram of teachers that I would share a lot of. At that time, I was in the classroom. So I was sharing my instructional practices on the daily of what I was doing. And I would get direct messages from teachers saying, okay, I love this idea, but you have students working and collaborating together, and my class could never. I was like, oh, but they could. And I can't give that information to them, right, in 180 characters DM back. But when Jimmy had asked, like, what would you write about? I said, I would really want to write about how to build positive classroom communities and talk about relationships in all different realms of education, because it all works together. And I feel like in your teacher preparation classes, they talk a lot about why it's so important, but no one really talks about how to do it. And so my book is really, I really tried to put practical strategies, ideas, things that teachers could use and flex to meet the needs of their particular schools, students, etc. And it is primarily for elementary, but it could be stretched into secondary if you keep an open mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. We're good at adapting. We can all do that.
Yes.
Well, the struggles you see in elementary a lot of times are also in secondary. So I think there's probably a lot of connections there. Yes. So Shane, will you just talk through, people are coming from all different places that are watching. So some folks might be in school session like 3 weeks already, and some might be starting. So how might our teachers build positive rapport and relationships with students? Obviously, we can't say day one, but maybe early in the school year.
Definitely. Well, Lainey talked a lot, the previous speaker before me talked a lot about being seen, heard, and valued. And that really is the foundation of building positive rapport and relationships. I always start by, do I know the students' names on the first day of school? And I know in secondary that is a harder thing because you have 100 plus students, but in the elementary setting, it's can we get every student's name down and can we pronounce it correctly? I think that especially with our ever more diversifying classrooms, that's really important to honor their identities and their cultures. I come from an immigrant father who, he immigrated here from Iran, and he has a very Iranian name. It's rooted in history and culture, but people could not pronounce it. And he would be so frustrated when people would say it wrong. So he doesn't even say it out loud anymore. He goes by a nickname, and that's just really deflating. And so just knowing that honoring a student's identity first and foremost is like already creating a safe and supportive environment. And then really, I would say simple things that we are almost sometimes too busy to think about. And so just putting it at the forefront of our brains to make sure that we're tapping into, can we connect with students on things that they're interested in? Have we asked them about their personal lives and what they do outside of school and make connections off of that? Greeting students. I mean, you all talked with Lainey about just quite literally saying hello. When students walk into your classroom, the best thing you can do is be at the very front door, greet them with a smile and by name. And it also is a really great opportunity to get a vibe from your students of, oh, I noticed that, Sally was walking in and she's usually so peppy and she's looking real down today. So I need to make sure that I check in with her because again, you want them to know that you see them and you're there to support them. And they might not need it immediately, but you want to let them know that you're there for them when they need it. And then quality time. So especially as people are settling into their routines right now, quality time is a really great way to get your students to see you as a human and not just as their teacher. So that could look like within the school day, going and eating lunch in the cafeteria with your students. It could be playing outside at recess with your students. Just really having those moments to talk with them and connect with them. And it's not necessarily tied to academic content. And then finally, it's a lot about asking students for feedback on things that they like in the classroom, things that perhaps they didn't like in the classroom. Because as a teacher, I wanted to know if they didn't like something, because if I tried it again, they weren't going to engage and then no learning was going to get done. And so it was more important to me that I knew what their feedback was so that I could work with it. And so if you ask for feedback, I always say you need to use the feedback. Be prepared to take the constructive feedback and utilize it and change your practice. There are some things that we can't always change, and that's okay. But maybe what are some tiny tweaks that we could make to help make students engage more? So those are just some like teeny tiny pieces that they're not heavy lifts, but they're things that sometimes fall off our radar when we become so busy as educators.
Well, you bring a good point up, Shane, because we are busy, and so some teachers listening, they're probably like, I can't go out there on recess time because that's my time, and
Yeah.
I know that is just that extra step that actually makes a difference long term when we're talking about behavior. So right, and so I would love to hear more about like, is there one go-to thing that you incorporate or you try to tell teachers? This is the thing to invest in. This one thing, if you just start doing this tomorrow, this can be helpful.
Honestly, it would be the greeting everyone at the door to get that vibe check. So if I were to take one thing from that list of items that I gave, it would be, and that's the easiest thing to do. I think that's the easiest entry point for teachers is make sure that you're greeting students at the door and saying goodbye to them and, making sure that they're leaving your classroom on a really positive note as well.
Yeah, it really can make a difference in mental health. When I work with kids, they are mentioning that when teachers do that, it does make them feel wanted, as
Mhm.
opposed to the kids are like, nobody cares about me. That teacher doesn't care about me. They don't even look at me.
They're like, okay, yeah, just do your morning work. Come on in. That's not a very like, I'm not super excited to learn right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's right. And so, why do you think cultivating safety and support in like kind of a community classroom, why is that so important to support academics, like the learning process? Why is that important?
So I'm going to bring in a little bit of, I'm a science of learning, neuroscience nerd. I really love learning about all of that. So I'm going to bring a little bit of that in, along with the things that we just know is good practice. So, first and foremost, like learning is the thing that we are there to do in school. And being able to set the foundation for students to be able to engage in that learning is super important, which is why when we say creating a safe and supportive environment and teachers are like, yeah, but content, no, safe and supportive environment first, so that students can access the content. We know that any human, if we are feeling unsafe or unwell, we go into maybe what's called our lizard brain, right? Where we completely shut down. I know Zaretta Hammond calls it the amygdala hijack. And you go into a survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, or when your most basic needs are not being met, we cannot learn because we can't even access our frontal cortex. And that's where all of our learning, decision making, and regulation occur. And so having that safe and supportive environment to start is super important, because if we can't even access the learning because we can't process the learning, we're dead in the water at that point, right? We're not able to actually engage students to do what they're there to do, which is to learn. And then if I want to connect that again to neuroscience, if we think about working memory for students, especially older students, we have about 4 chunks of working memory that we can juggle at one time. And if we're feeling any sort of stressors, and stressors can happen from having a fight with your parent in the morning who dropped you off, to maybe your significant other broke up with you before you walked into the classroom, to you experienced a microaggression from someone within the school. And all of a sudden, out of our 4 parking spaces that we have for our working memory, now all of a sudden 2 to 3 are taken up, and we have 1 chunk to work with. And our ability to actually engage and work with the information in learning, it decreases. So it's really important that we are creating that safe environment. And if a student does come in dysregulated for any reason, being that space where they know that they can take a moment to engage in a coping mechanism or a regulation strategy, so that they can kind of bring themselves back to neutral. And that will take time. I think that also teachers are like, okay, yeah, go regulate for like 3 minutes and I'll bring you back here. And it's like, 3 minutes might not be enough. And it's not to say that we want to like elongate it forever, but we also want to honor the fact that, 2 to 3 minutes for regulation. A break is okay. If you know it's coming on and you take a break, 2 to 3 minutes can work potentially. But, coming down after feeling triggered potentially could take a little bit longer. So we just want to make sure that we're giving time for students to regulate, that we're empathizing and supporting and creating that space so that students can actually access the process, the parts of their brain to learn. That's really quite what it comes down to.
So let's talk about like collaboration too, because obviously there's a direct correlation to supporting learning, but how does building a community in the classroom directly enhance collaboration?
Yeah. So one of the things I talk about in Be the Flame is that collaboration is not innate. And that's really important to know. So I think a lot of times in education, we put people in group situations and we just say, go, like, great, you get to do group work, go. And we need to know that we actually need to teach students to be able to actually engage in that type of work. And so if I'm thinking about how it directly supports learning, we can do team building activities at the beginning of the year. And that's a really good foundation to teach the skills of collaboration that then carry forth into how we collaborate to learn. And it's really important that with teachers, we set a foundation, or as teachers for students, we set a foundation of what does that look like? So examples, and what does that not look like? The non-examples, and being really explicit with that. And then coaching on how they actually interact with each other. So once we've named the explicit skills or behaviors that we want to see with students collaborating, then we can intentionally model what that looks like. And then we can coach students while they're actually in their academic groups. I highly recommend doing a lot of this collaboration work, especially at the beginning of the year, with like either low cognitive load work, stuff that is easily accessed, or things that are personally available, maybe not academic, so that the cognitive load is learning the behaviors and the structures of collaboration so that they can leverage those when you actually add the academic content. It's like if you ever took a Kagan structure training, they say, introduce the cooperative structures, right? With like fun personal activities so that they know how to do the structures when you then pair them with academics. The same idea. We just want to decrease cognitive load to learn one thing over another first. And so, yeah, you start with your norms, your expectations, your routines. You jump to modeling, and then you do some coaching with students within their academic collaborative group. So as they're actually interacting, you might go sit down and listen in, and perhaps you might take a leadership role to showcase what that collaboration might look and sound like. Have students, you're giving them feedback. You then take a step back and, tell them, why don't you try it now? And you watch kind of like in a fishbowl. And then you also have students reflect. So how did that collaboration go? Did it support our learning? If so, why? If not, why not? And a lot of that reflection can be done independently and then also shared out in a group. So we want to have that time for personal reflection and group reflection.
Wow. Well, it makes me think about like your doctorate degree. Okay. And so when you got that in like executive leadership, right? But you also have educational equity as a part of that.
Yes.
So, okay. And so when I hear you talk, I always think about like, what's the extension of community and families? Families are there. We're not really talking too much about how to bring the families into this. So I'm just wondering, like, how do teachers cultivate those relationships with the family members? And is that essential to what we're trying to do here?
Oh my gosh, yes. It is incredibly essential. It's a partnership, right? We are on the same team. And I think as you become a more seasoned educator, it becomes easier to reach out to families to talk about their student. New educators, it might be really intimidating, right? And so how do we begin to build that capacity to reach out to, talk to families? And I would say we'd start with the positive, right? So really start to engage families at the beginning of the year by sending home information via phone. If you have some sort of communication system with families that they use, like, I don't know, Class Dojo or Remind, email, but just letting one-on-one that family know that what positive thing that their student is doing. If you can call, that's even better. But I also know that we are really tired a lot of the time. And so any sort of communication is better than no communication at all. What that positive input does, it's kind of like a banking system, right? We're putting in deposits so that at some point, if we have to use a withdrawal, we have a lot of positive intent on the family side, because we want them to know that we are there in partnership. We are supportive, and we want to be transparent with our support for their child, right? Like, we are on the same team. We really want to make sure that they know that. And so having that partnership when you do have to make a withdrawal can really help, so that you potentially have consistent routine structures and messaging with families, so that if you're saying one thing in school, they are hearing the same thing at home. And hopefully together, you're seeing behavior change across the spectrum in both places and not just one. And that's really what we're striving for when I say partnership. And so it's incredibly important that we bring families into that learning, because when you do need their support, when a student is potentially struggling and needing that extra support, it's not as Jimmy says, right, it's not a gotcha. It's a, we've got you. Like, we are here together to work towards a student's reaching their best potential.
All right. You brought up Jimmy Costas, obviously kicked this event off, and then Allison Apsey followed right after him. And they both talked about just the relationships with our team and how important that is. So for you, what would you suggest as far as building a positive relationship with your team? And then what is the impact on the work that we do?
Yeah. So teaching is complex. I read during my doctorate, I was doing a lot of research papers, and my focus was on foundational literacy. And one of the articles I read was titled, Teaching Reading is Rocket Science, right? So what we do is high cognitive load, and that doesn't even encompass all of the unwritten curriculums that we are teaching, which is all on behavior and, character values and how do we regulate ourselves. And we really need I'm losing my word here. Well, we need a team. I was like, it takes a village. We need a village. Good gracious. Thank you. It's like when you're listening to a podcast and the host is like, I lost that word, and you're screaming it in your car because you know what they're trying to say.
Right. And And you've got like this new role. So you, I know you're so busy and you've got so much to do. So it's, your brain must be fried. So thank you. Go ahead.
No problem. No, it's good. We need a village too. And I know that like Jennifer Gonzalez talks about finding your marigolds, right? And finding the people that are going to help you grow the most. And that's why we need to create relationships within our teams. If we are working with ourselves on an island, we are making things so much harder on ourselves, not just to spread out the work, but also to have people who understand what you're going through, right? I can come home and say, oh my gosh, this thing happened at work. And my husband's like, okay, like, I'm really sorry. He can try to empathize, but he doesn't quite understand what my day to day looks like. Whereas, I reach out to one of my educator friends and they're like, oh, yes, I understand, right? It feels nice to be seen, heard, valued, and understood in a very specific way during those moments. And then being able to actually build trust in small moments around with your team allows you all to actually do the really intense work of vulnerably showing your data, right? And actually talking about what practices are most high yield and making sure that you all are utilizing practices and strategies within your classroom that are helping all of your students. So if we're working on an island, none of that collaboration is happening. If you're struggling teaching some specific components or contents, you're not able to reach out to say, how might I do this in a different way? And then on top of that, if you're maybe working with a student that is dysregulated or needing some specific behavior supports, you also need a village to lean on to say, I've tried this and I've tried this and I've tried this and nothing's helping. And so how might I, what are you doing? What ideas do you have? That's when teams, when they really come together, where the magic is you get a lot of really fantastic professionals in a room to talk about what ideas they have. They're going to be able to share something that might work. And then I'll talk, like, that was just like in the classroom. As someone who is now outside of the classroom in a district administrative role now, building relationships in this capacity is incredibly important. So I learned it at the teacher level with my team and within my building. And then now is like an ELA coordinator, I need to have relationships with people in the technology department, in the ELD department, in the literacy department, in right the special education department, because all of our work interacts and we need to be able to talk about it. And if I don't have a relationship with those people, then we can't do the great work that our district needs. So it's something that not only in the building level is important, but also at the district level as well.
How do you coordinate those relationships and that communication to build those? It's a lot.
That's a great question. So a lot of it is, mine has been really trial and error of like, I really needed something and I sought someone out, and then you go from there. You ask questions, you ask them to collaborate. I'll give an example of recently I've got to collaborate with one of our district technology employees who doesn't usually work in like a teacher facing or a student facing role. But I was like, I need you to help me with this school AI space. And how do I find it for students that want to use it? And so we sat down and, I learned so much just about him and his family during those meetings, right? Because you're not just talking about the work, you're talking about the human. So it always starts with, so what's going on? How are you? How was your weekend? Are you doing a bathroom reno? How's that reno going? Like,
I love it. Yeah. Or the IT people are your best friends. Make them your best friends. And I always said the school social worker, they're your best friends too. Make sure you know who they are. That is great. Well, you're doing so much great work and you're leading others very well. And it's really nice to know like how you went from the classroom and kind of out and then brought it right back to the classroom for really like leveling up the instruction. So it's like great tools, strategies, all of it. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So I put your the variety of resources because you've got a variety of those too. If you guys click on that link, make sure you check those out. Is there anything you want to say about the resources that you provide here?
I was going to say, I wish I could have provided more. My hair was a little bit on fire at the beginning of the year, more so than usual. Not in a bad way, just in a good, busy way. But
yeah,
just if you could find me on Instagram, that's kind of where I share a lot of my resources and practices and ideas. So
Awesome. Yeah. You've got a great following there too, because you do provide all of that stuff there. So you guys need to go right to Instagram. Tell everyone your handle there. I'll put it in the chat.
It's just at Dr. Shane Saeed and with no punctuation or spaces.
Okay. I got it. All right.
Awesome.
Is that right? Okay.
That's right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. We're just grateful that you're here. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you all so much.